That sounds okay.
Okay. You can hear it, but it's not disruptive?
Yeah, I think that's
okay.
good.
And this is what the lights look like? Okay?
All right.
All right.
All right, I motor mouse through some of that. I hope that's okay, just to try and get to the main attraction for this evening. So, and I don't know whether we wrote up an elaborate introduction for these guys, or they sent me one, but I've known Jim and Chris Gold for several years. They taught me, well, actually, we were both at a seminar learning about Camtasia, which is a program for doing screen recordings and animations and things like that, as well as video editing. It's a pretty good video editor. And they run a program where they go around the country in the back of an RV. Their RV has scaled up and scaled down over time, but they have a mobile attack studio, and they have a studio at home, which we're going to see a little bit of both of those things. So I thought that they would be good people to talk about how you put together a video webinar studio and I've asked them to think about a couple of price points, because Jim apparently has spent more money than God on the Geeks on Tour home studio. That's the sense I get from hearing Chris talk about it at any rate. And so we're gonna hear about what you might do to get more professional and how you present in online video or online meetings, and what the basic elements of that are, particularly light, camera, and sound. So I'm going to turn it over to Jim and Chris, who will lead us through the center of this meeting. And we talked about doing what, maybe 20, 25 minutes presentation and then go to Q&A?
That sounds good. Perfect.
So Arlene, maybe you can start giving them warnings at 20 minutes, give them a green light at 20 minutes, yellow at 23, red at 25, and then we'll spend a few minutes on Q&A and then go to table topics.
Sounds good.
All right, I am going to mute myself and shut up.
Okay. Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, and welcome guests. We are living in such an exciting time. I mean, if you have a message that you would like to deliver to a potential worldwide audience, all you need is a phone, a smartphone, and an internet connection. All you'd have to do is turn it into selfie mode, tap the Go Live button on either Facebook or YouTube, and you are broadcasting on the web, potentially to anybody in the world. So we call that webcasting. I still often call it broadcasting. And that is a live technology. Now let me show you a little bit. I'm going to share my screen. And we have been giving a webcast, a live webcast every week called What Does This Button Do? Because we are in technology training. We've been in technology training since 1983, and we like to do it so much, and now we have this opportunity to do it to a potentially worldwide audience. We are now we just gave episode number 129. 129 times we've done this. It's a weekly technology class called What Does This Button Do? And it is a free on YouTube. It's recorded live, and we started back in June of 2014. You can imagine that we have learned a bit in that time. We've taken some lumps and bruises, and we are now mostly having fun with it. So the minimum requirements, all you have to have, as I mentioned, is a phone. And you can, so all you want to do is talk to an audience. All you need is a phone. This picture shows that we are in our RV, and we literally just pulled off at a rest area because we had come to the appointed time where we promised to do a live session. And we turned on the phone that's in its little holder on the dashboard, and we tapped go live on Facebook. So notice that the light is in our faces. That works out just great from the windshield of the RV. So lights, camera, sound. You can spend a lot of money or nothing at all. So I am in my office right now. This is my studio. Jim is downstairs in the room that he has totally taken over for our studio. But if you just follow some basic precepts, for example, the light is on my face. Now, and it's dark behind me, so I don't have to worry too much about the background. Now, if this was in the daytime, there's a window over here, and that would be too much light coming behind me. So I would try to change the position of the laptop so that the light was coming in my face. That's all. I'm using the camera that is built in. I make sure to take a little cloth and clean the lens because it can get greasy. I think it's good to have it at eye level, and it would not be if my computer was on the desk. So here is my jerry-rigged. I just got a box, and I set the laptop on top of the box in order to get the camera at eye level. And then sound. You don't necessarily need anything, especially when you're using a phone. What are phones for? They're for sound. But if there is anything else going on around you, then you want to make sure that you don't get echo and feedback. And so at least an earpiece so that the sound isn't coming out of the speakers of your laptop and then going right back in to the microphone. And that's all I was going to use, but Jim said no, he was afraid that I was going to interfere with him downstairs, so he made me put on a full headset. All right, with that just introduction on that you don't need to spend any money, I am going to show you, it can get, but with our show, we have 2 people, 2 computers, 2 microphones. It's not just one person talking to the audience. So how do we not get echo and feedback? We also want to show slides on a computer. How do we switch back and forth between showing our faces and showing slides? And we like to do demos. How do we show mobile devices on the same show? For that, it takes magic. So let me introduce you to my Wizard of Oz. We're going to pull back the curtains, and he's going to show you a little bit about the kind of magic that he does in our studio. My husband, my Mr. Geek, Jim Gould.
Well, thank you so much, Chris. All right, are we on me now? It's hard to tell with this presentation software, but one of the things that I really wanted to talk about today is the difference between presentations and conferencing. Now, what we have here with this Zoom technology and RingCentral, it works great, but we need to know how we look. We really want to look our best, and we want to sound our best when we do a presentation. If all we're doing is a conference call where there's a bunch of us in there, we can stand out by having a better picture and a better sound system. So I'm going to talk about some of that as we go through here. Let's see if this works for me. All right. I have to find that screen. Warning, the things we are about to show you took us many years and more than a couple of dollars. So it's just important to know that this stuff, if you want to do it right, it can cost a little bit of money. As Chris said earlier, you don't need to spend any money. Just a little bit of thought in what you have here will make a big difference. So, as she said, we started with only a laptop computer and some smartphones, and so can you.
This is our home studio. How long has it taken you to put this all together, Jim?
How old am I now? Oh, I keep changing it. We have a new addition. We have this green screen. I just painted the wall with this green. We have a green screen over here. We have our sign. Okay, Google, turn on set lights.
Lights. Camera.
Okay, turning on the set lights.
All right. So we have top, bottom, front, side.
Bandwidth is the most important thing for any of these technologies to work. You have to have plenty of bandwidth, and if you don't have the bandwidth, don't even try doing the webcast. Upload speeds are much more important than download speeds when you're doing a streaming connection. And we say that at least 3 megabits per second upload is the minimum you're going to need. There are places on the web where you can test your speed. If you don't have good enough speed, there are some things that you can do to decrease your bandwidth, but typically you're going to want to have the best bandwidth possible.
So the studio in our RV, we have lights. And they are just clipped on to different places on the wall. And there's also a light shining on the photo box for purposes of lighting up my phone demonstration. Anything else about lights?
Well, we have the Logitech camera on a tripod right there. That's our main
There's
camera.
camera.
And then the software, Chris has her computer, I have my computer, and I handle the switching for the audience. Chris handles the switching for either the light box or the presentation, the slideshow that we do for everyone.
So
That looks pretty cool.
Yeah, so
Yes.
this is where I show the phone, because this document camera is connected to my computer, and I can, on the computer screen, show what is being seen by the document camera.
Cool.
So sound is really the next most important thing after bandwidth. You need to have a quiet space. You want to have no traffic, waterfalls, barking dogs, or cranking up diesel engines. And earbuds or a headset to separate your microphone and speakers. Echo and feedback can be a problem if you're using speakers that are separate. We've run into that problem again and again. I use a lavalier microphone and a mixing board.
Sound is the most important.
Yeah, so I have this Behringer sound board where I can put in a couple of microphones, and that's important because we have 2 computers, but we only want a microphone input, and I can handle 2 microphones, and it goes into the USB that goes into the computer, and I have controls over that. We have 1 input for sound with 2 microphones.
So do you advise that people do this?
Oh yeah, it's good for the economy.
And then lights. So you have sound, you have a good bandwidth connection. The next thing that you really want to check is your lights. You want to have plenty of light, because the way these cameras work is they're not really good in low light, but if you give it added light, you'll get a much better picture no matter what your subject is. Studio lighting typically is a basic 3-point lighting setup. You want to have your camera set up in front of your subject. You have a key light. That's the bright light that's lighting the subject. You want to have a fill light. That's a medium intensity light. And then you want to have a backlight or a hair light. And then you also have to worry about your green screen lighting. You want to have even lighting all around. This is the kind of setup that we use. I have 3 LED panels with diffusers on them and power, so I can plug them in and they can all get powered at the same time off of one extension cord. So I have the set lights all together, and all I need to do is turn on one switch and all my lights come on. Now, to get these setups, you can go in and you can buy the whole kit if you want. Think about spending $150 to $250. Now, I got mine in pieces. I didn't get them all at once. I got them as I needed them. This is my mixer. It is a USB mixer. It was less than $100. It handles 2 XLR type microphones. I use the lavalier type microphones. And the way we do our show is we have multiple inputs. And in order for it to work without echoing with 2 computers and 2 microphones and another sound source, I have to put everything into my computer in one place. And that's what gives us the better sound. This is our studio, another picture that we have. And you can see I have a wall that's painted green behind me. I have a green screen that's another setup. So I have basically 2 sets here with my lights. Notice that there's a Canon camera there on a tripod. You can also use a good DSLR camera for your main camera as a webcam using the Sparco Cam software that we've talked about here. One of our Toastmasters, Arlene, has done a very nice primer on how to use Sparco Cam. The camera itself, you got to clean the lens. Notice right there with the dirty lens, it's fuzzy. With a clean lens, it's sharp. And raise that camera to eye level. The technology that we use is free. YouTube live streaming is how we do our weekly show, our What Does This Button Do show. It allows multiple participants, so we can get 2 computers running different systems, and we can even bring in guests. It's a wonderful tool to be able to use multiple cameras. We can do screen sharing, and it's free and it automatically records. If you want to get a little fancier, you can do some kind of webcasting software. This Zoom software works really, really well, but you don't have the kind of control over the audience selector that I have with YouTube live streaming. Facebook Live is something that we're doing every week too. We do our Facebook Lives with an iPad instead of the computer, but we can also use the computer. You can do it anywhere. It's free. It's fun. And all you need to do is remember some of the basics for lighting and technology. Let's scooch out of here real quick. Okay.
So we did have a couple of questions
All right.
here in the chat. Can you share a description of the lighting package you shared in case we want to purchase it as a package online, because Black Friday is coming up, you know?
Yeah, what I would have to do, I don't have that right now, but Neewer, Neewer lighting. If you go to Amazon and you check out Neewer, They have all of the equipment that you need there. Cowboy Studios is another system out there where you can buy the whole kit. So just do an Amazon search for studio lighting and you'll get these kits. And they're anywhere between, I'd say for the full kit, for a full lighting kit with the diffusers and everything, $150 to $250. You can get real fancy. The camera that I use here for most of the stuff, and what most people tend to use, is the Logitech, the C190. It has stereo microphones and it has a good lens, and the software works great. The Sparko Cam is something that's really, really made this a lot of fun for me, though, because you can have a green screen. And we talked about green screens. That's my green screen right now. So all I need to do is choose the green and I can replace it with anything back there.
One little issue that most people won't have is we wear these little hats and they have a green brim on them. That was a real problem. I had to figure out somehow to put some fabric over the brim so that our foreheads wouldn't disappear into the background. That looks like the Grand Canyon, Jim.
That is the Grand Canyon. Pretty amazing, the stuff that you can do here.
And you can even put video behind you too, right?
I can. And let me show you some of that.
And while you're doing that, somebody asked, what's the difference between a document camera and a regular camera? A document camera faces down. It's meant to display what's on the desk. So it's facing down, but it's still feeding into the computer. So I put a phone on the desktop and the camera is getting that.
Okay, so now I have a video in the background. It's a drone video that I took up in New Jersey back in August. So you can really get fancy with this technology if you want. You can do picture-in-picture. You can do, all the different tools that you can use. Bottom line is, you really want to have this thing set up and you need to practice. The plan is to make it look good. With the right tools, the right camera, the right lighting, the right software, and the best bandwidth possible, you too can do a beautiful presentation. Mr. Toastmaster.
Oh, wow. All right. Well, I guess we're ready to, we got some questions over chat. I'll ask you the question I asked earlier. Do you necessarily need to buy photographer's studio lighting, or would just a bright office light, like a bright LED light for the office work?
That's a good question. I would say typically you do want to buy the photographer's tools, the lighting, because what comes into effect there is called color temperature. Mm-hmm. And you have daylight and your white balance needs to be set. And that's a function of the camera properties. So your better cameras will do white balance. Your cheaper cameras you might have to mess with in order to find any settings that'll do that. So you want to have the most natural lighting as possible. Some people say that if you're setting up a studio, you want to blank out all of the natural lighting. You want to cover the windows. You don't want any of that. And you want to have all of your artificial lighting set to the proper color temperature. That way, when you set your white balance, everything will look natural. The tools that we use these days, these cameras, they're a lot smarter than we give them credit for. And with just a couple of settings, you don't really need to have all of that fancy stuff. If you have tungsten lighting, regular incandescent lighting, you can adjust your camera for that. So no, you don't need to have that fancy stuff, but yes, it will make it look better if you do.
Okay.
I see another question in the chat here I can take. Yeah. Do you like an app like Visor for projecting your mobile device onto your screen share presentation? So there's yes and no. We use TeamViewer when we want to project the screen of the phone directly onto the computer, but then you don't see my fingers. And sometimes it's really important to see the fingers to understand what you're teaching on the phone. So the document camera shows everything that is going on. And secondly, adding a third piece of technology is just problematic. You know, just the more layers of technology you have, the more to go wrong.
Right. Those tools typically will use some of your bandwidth too, and you want to have the most bandwidth available to the presentation when you're doing this. A live presentation has different considerations than just a recorded video.
I see, I'm going to mispronounce it again. Bhushan has raised his hand, I guess has a question. Go ahead and speak up.
Yeah, I didn't want to type a question. I'm a verbal kind of a person. So Jim and Chris, this is amazing. This is putting me back in time when I used to do presentations for my family and Toastmaster friends on things like this, but back in the days. My question to you is, why? Why are you doing this? This is so amazing.
That's a great question. Well, there are a couple of reasons. The reason that we do this is because we can. The technology is here. We are geeks. I've been a geek for many, many years. We both came from the computer training industry. Chris had the first computer training center in South Florida, and she was the president of the International Computer Trainers Association.
And
So,
Jim was that guy in high school, the AV guy, you know, with the glasses, running with the tray full of all the AV equipment from class to class and using the movie camera out.
Our business is technology training for travelers. So this is how we make our money. This is what we do to generate revenue.
Hey guys, actually, maybe you should explain briefly what you give away and what you sell, because you don't charge for people to come in and
Right.
watch the button show on Sunday.
Right. And I just think that's fascinating. We have made our living from a membership subscription website for over 10 years now. And it started out saying everything that we wrote, all of our written material was freely available on the website. We only charged for our videos, which I made with Camtasia. They were recorded tutorial videos. Now in this YouTube generation, you can't. If we charged for our YouTube teaching, nobody would watch it. Nobody, period. So you have to get lots of people to watch it. So then what I do is I write up show notes. I write up detailed notes and links. And if you are a member of our website, you get those notes.
Right.
So that's just we just have to keep coming up with things that give members value, and we make our living from getting more members.
Right. And I think it's an example of the general principle that often you can give things away. If you give away good value, people are willing to pay to get the extra stuff, the good stuff, right? I think we actually could extend. I think we could go a few more minutes, a few more questions, Arlene. Adrian, were you trying to ask a question? I think Adrian may be unmuted by mistake, so I'm going to mute everybody again. Or attempt to.
Alyssa has a question.
Okay, go ahead.
She says, do you need a special program for a mixer to mix everything together?
Jim, I think we've got you muted too. So if you're trying to speak.
Okay, sorry about that. The mixer that I use has some software that's included with it, and that runs on the computer. Basically, the reason that I use this mixer is that we have two computers on our regular show normally, but if you have two different microphone inputs, then you're going to have issues with echo and bad sound. So I realized that if one computer is running the show and the other one is muted, now I can have both microphones and the other sound inputs going into the mixer and it mixing down into one input, and that's what I send out to the presentation.
And do you have software or a piece of hardware that you use to switch between the video feeds as well? Because you'll be going back and forth between a couple of webcams, but then sometimes you also go to Chris's computer for screen sharing.
Right. The way we set it up is Chris's computer is running the document camera software and the presentation slideshow that we have for every show. And that's sitting here on our desk. I'm sitting next to her running the Hangout on Air, the YouTube Live setup, and the cameras. And I can switch back and forth between the two computers, and each computer has a couple of different functions. So she handles her side of things, I handle my side of things, and I handle the audience selector. I determine what the audience is seeing through the show, through the presentation.
Okay. And Lou Brown asked how much time you spend preparing for each episode, since what you're doing is live.
Chris does all the work.
That's me. Yeah. I prepare a lesson plan.
I set up the show. I do the software setup as far as that stuff works. I make sure that everything's working. Hopefully, it's Chris's job really to come up with the show. She comes up
content.
The content, yeah, the topic that we're going to teach, how it's going to lay out. We have every one of these shows that we do is in 3 parts, just like a Toastmasters meeting. So we have a beginner's tip, and it usually includes some sort of an editing tip for photo editing, and that's a specialty of ours. And then we have the beginner's lesson. That's where we actually use the photo box, and she's showing the document camera, showing the devices, the smartphones and tablets. And then we'll do an app of the week. And because it's a live thing, we can do chat, and we can take comments, we can take questions live. So we do the shows on Sunday, typically, if we have bandwidth. Then we clean it up a little bit.
Thinking about that question, though, of how much time do I take, it's an interesting, because when I had prepared videos, I got it down to, it was 1 hour of my time per 1 minute of prepared video. And that's being pretty modest, actually. It's sometimes more than that, at least 1 hour per 1 minute of prepared video. Doing it live, it's less time, because once you turn on that go live button, that's it. So I always spend several hours preparing the material for the lesson, but like a lesson plan, a teacher. But once we click go live, we go. So whatever time I spent, that's it. Whereas recorded video, you can spend over and over and over.
Okay, so Joe says he's asking about the SparkoCam in the chat. Yes, that's the one that I'm talking about. And why a green screen? Well, if it's done right, it can really make your any location into a studio. Now you can have control over your background. You don't have to worry about noise, junk. I know some people that set up their studio just in a closet or in a small room, and all you need is the camera and the green screen and a good microphone, and the software that will handle the green screening. And that's just really all.
I guess the idea is there's not too much green in your flesh tone usually. As Chris mentioned, if you're wearing a green clothing. I think Hollywood used to use blue screens. That's what the Millennium Falcon was standing in front of.
My green screen is reversible. The other side is blue, so it can work either way.
Actually, Arlene, didn't you say do you use a blue screen? Because I think you said something about your eye color or something.
No, not my eyes, my hair. I guess my hair has green in it because if I use the green screen, my hair is, so I use the blue one.
Okay. All right. So whatever the computer can cancel out.
For her timer, right?
So
yes, on the timer.
We did want to allow time for table topics. How about one more question though?
Well, I see Deborah Carr has one in the chat. She says most of us work single and are not as tech savvy. What initially, other than computer, iPhone, are the main things to consider investing in first? Well, the most important thing is bandwidth. So internet connection. You need to have that. The next most important thing is sound. So a good microphone. The microphone will make a difference in how much people, and then after that, it would be lights. Camera is the last.
All right. Well, thank you, Jim and Chris. Big virtual applause for the Geeks on Tour this evening. Let's turn it over to our table topics master, Norman, to give us a couple of table topics this evening.
Okay. Hello. This is an interesting week in the United States of America. On Thursdays, we are celebrating Thanksgiving, which is probably one of the biggest family holidays in the United States. But I realize we have an international club, and I wonder how some others navigate this. So Fabiola, you're in the United States, what family holiday is most analogous to our Thanksgiving, where everyone gets together in your home country?
Thank you for that question. We are not so far from the United States. At some point, I would say we are South Florida. But that means that a lot of customs get to us also. So for some people, to celebrate Thanksgiving is like having a special day where you really give thanks for everything, the smallest things in your life or not. But the most important day that we come together as family is 24th of December. That is the night before Christmas. That is a real family time for us where we gather and then we share with each other and have a lot of food. That is always one of the big parts. So it is a very special time for us at that moment. And so we celebrate as a family that one special day. Back to you, Mr. Tabletop.
Thank you very much, Fabiola. I'm not sure how true this is, but reportedly Thanksgiving was celebrated initially by Native Americans and Pilgrims in Massachusetts. Carol, if you were a Native American and watching the Pilgrims get off of the boat, what would you tell them about this new land that they were actually working on?
Besides the language issue, I'm just teasing you, Norman. What would we tell the newcomers to this country? You're asking me to answer that question in a somewhat logical way, and I don't feel logical as an Indian watching these newcomers come onto my land. they're strange, they're different, they're unusual, and they're needy, and they're not prepared, and they smell. Right? All of these things are just crossing my mind, and I'm thinking, I don't want to deal with them. But they're newcomers, and we are a gracious society, so I will have to deal with it. So I will offer them guidance on how to recoup some of the harvest. I will teach them how to use our food so that they can prepare for the winter. Whether it be, I think it's called pectin, or some of the other things to dry the food and salt it. They knew some of the stuff, but this is a whole new world for them. So in terms of being open and receptive to guiding them, I will do my utmost to be of service. But there's a point where I say, they're scary and they have big guns, and I don't understand that gun thing. So I will be somewhat cautious with them as I transition into this new environment. And if they're spreading their yucky diseases and illnesses, nope, we're not interested in them at all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Carol.
Pardon me, Norman. We apparently have at least one, maybe a couple of second-time visitors interested in giving their speech about joining.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay. I didn't tell you.
Okay.
That's why you didn't know. Bhushan would like to do that, and I think possibly Joe as well, but we'll come back to him. But and correct me again on this, on the pronunciation.
Bhushan, why don't we have your speech about why you'd like to become an online presenter?
Thank you, Mr. Table Topics Master, for giving me the opportunity to explain why I should become a member at Online Presenters. Well, first of all, I'm a firm believer in strengths. I'm a follower of StrengthsFinder. And I feel like, speaking and connecting with people is a strength. And in this day and age, I would definitely like to improve on my strength of connectedness. So Online Presenters definitely offers me an opportunity to connect with people of diverse cultures across the globe, and also lets me continue learning at the same time. Learning is my second strength. Finally, I'd like to say that I'm a firm believer of paid forward. So at some point in my life, people blessed me with lessons they learned, mentored me, coached me, taught me. And I feel like being an advanced club, I do have an opportunity to give back. Give back graciously, give back in a format that makes sense so that I can continue learning through giving. And I would really appreciate the opportunity this club offers to let me become a member and contribute. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right. And Joe said next time. So.
Okay.
Terrific. Is anybody else a second time or more visitor interested in joining? All right.
Okay, do we have more time, or what do we?
I think that's probably the time that we should take. Why don't we get a timer's report on the two regular table topics, and we can vote on best table topic.
Okay, the two regular table topics, we had Fabiola at 117 and Carol Prahinsky at 135.
All right, and who's our vote counter this evening? I'm sorry.
Michael Christie?
Michael, okay, so send a private message to Michael with your vote for best table topic, and table topics about why people want to join are always the best, actually, but that's a different topic slightly. All right, let's ask our general evaluator, John Quick, to step forward and lead us through the evaluation portion of the meeting.
Thank you, David. And Toastmaster, it's now time for evaluations. We didn't have formal criteria, seeing as this was a workshop segment today. I'm going to lead off with a couple comments, and I want to invite for a minute or two anyone else who would like to say something to Jim and Chris, perhaps bombard them with even more questions in this time. Jim and Chris, what I really appreciated was that you showed us two ends of the spectrum on this setup. You showed us the bare minimum, which is pick up your phone and make a video. And oftentimes that is just an excellent way to get out there and do it. And a lot of professionals even do it when they're not making their studio quality thing, but they're just trying to reach out to their audience and get in touch. So I like that side. And then Jim, your setup is very impressive. It's starting to get into like the thousands of dollars setup. And
Okay, but okay.
yeah. And then also I wanted to point out that Arlene had a presentation and I had a presentation like the $100 setup. So from all these, we got a few different angles on how to get going with videos and green screens. And that gives everybody a good spectrum where you can fit in. Okay. Now, how about anyone else? Is there something you'd like to ask or add regarding the workshop today? You can jump in if you like.
I guess one thing I didn't hear was what to do when things go horribly wrong. There's a keep your cool factor here that I think is pretty important for what you guys do.
Absolutely. And yeah, I guess that really just comes with experience, that the more you do this stuff, the more you see what's working, what doesn't work. You know, we regularly run into an issue with our sound that gets scratchy, and I have to go through and I have to mess with the soundboard. If you're doing a single microphone type thing, you know, it's not that complicated, but the kind of system that I want to run, I mean, I like this stuff, you know, I'm a geek. So yeah, you don't have to go this route. A good USB microphone is good. The Yetis are good. The Blues are good. There are a lot of good things that you can do without this extra stuff. And there's stuff that, you know, I could spend a lot more money.
One thing that could be really important is to make sure that you have somebody in the audience that you have somebody in the audience, period.
Yeah.
That early on, the first couple of times we did this, I think it was our second or third episode, we were yabbering on for 15 minutes before we realized that nobody could hear us.
Right. I had hit the wrong button, but now I know not to hit that button anymore. At least.
So I have a couple of questions.
Final questions. Sorry, we're running late today.
Okay. Two short questions. Jim and Chris, have you made any blooper videos from your early experiences that you can share with us?
We have talked about that.
Yeah, no,
I would love to see that. See, here's the thing. In Toastmasters, and I don't know about your experience with Toastmasters. Is this the first time you're doing it with Toastmasters?
Oh, we've been Toastmasters for a long time.
Well, the first time we've done this presentation.
Okay. So my question is, in Toastmasters, as we join the club and grow through the ranks, you know, we mature and we look back at ourselves years ago and we realize what we've learned. What I'd like to see is, you know, your presentation today was awesome. I'd like to see your first few attempts at doing this and how you've come along.
They're all up there.
They are? Okay.
They're
good.
on YouTube. They're all free. Check it
We
out.
have a playlist.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Just go to geeksontour.com.
All
Okay.
right, thanks, Chris and Jim. That was the other thing I forgot to mention. I was happy to see that you integrated such multimedia. You had the slides, you had the video, you had yourself. That was really cool. Okay, next up, let's hear our reports from our functionary duties today. Our counter is Dagmara.
Was your AI counter, and I would like to share my report. Words like a, very unnecessary words like a, like, you know, aware, have been used around 43 times. And people that didn't use this word were Chris and John. And I think Arlene. So congratulations to these people.
That I did not use?
You didn't use. Yeah, Chris, John, and Arlene didn't use this filling world. So you did really great. Congratulations.
That's
Thank you,
Toastmasters. I've been a Toastmaster since I was 12. So
Well, that was only.
We can see that, yeah.
Okay, our watcher today is Lois.
Thank you, Mr. General Evaluator. We had some great screenshots here. Of course, John, Arlene, Jim, Chris, the professionals there, looking great. Couple of things I did notice. Watch your hands. Some of you would sit there like this, like this. We can see you, I promise. Deborah, every now and then, Deborah Simpson, every now and then we caught you looking down like this. You want to make sure that you're looking at the camera while you're working. Norman, a lot of times you are so low down we can't see you. Make sure that you're always front and center. And David, I like how your green screen is kind of off-centered a little bit. It's like, we've got to get that thing just perfect. Overall, we all did a great job, and we're looking mighty fine, and I did not find anyone in their pajamas. Mr. General Evaluator.
Thank you, Lois. Next up for grammar is Lou.
Real quick, I also want to comment on Dave's light. We actually can see his light as opposed to it being behind the camera, but we're picking on you, Dave. Sorry. Anyway, with Jim and Chris's speech, since it was of a highly technical nature, I didn't notice any misuse of language. I mean, a lot of what you spoke about was, here again, technical uses of words and phrases and sentences that, to me, I didn't notice any misuse. If anyone else did, feel free to raise your hand. Now, some clever words I noticed. Webcasting versus broadcasting. In one of your slides, you said it takes magic. And Chris, you introduced him as my Wizard of Oz, which I love that. Geeks on Tour, Mr. and Mrs. Geek. That's really awesome. The more layers of technology, the more that can go wrong. And I think, Jim, you said scooch. I haven't heard the word scooch in a while, so that's cool. And I did hear Chris use the word jerry-rigged. I did not hear anyone else use it. If anyone else did use it, I apologize. Please raise your hand. Otherwise, I'll jerry-rig the end of my speech, and I don't even know if I misuse it there, and say, Mr. General Evaluator.
Thank you, Lou. Jerry-rig. The chat was very busy tonight. Mahi, can you please tell us about it? Mahi, we're not hearing you.
Sorry, I was double muted. Thank you, John. So we started off with a lot of appreciation in the chat for these kind of presentations. So thank you, Chris and Jim. And I did see Deborah, she jerry-rigged her intro through the chat when the audio did not work. So that was great. And there was a lot of, I think, a free advertisement for Google Tech by Jim. So we all loved that. And overall, the presentation made us all very inquisitive. Lot of queries about, technical queries about different infrastructure that has been used through the presentation. So I felt that this is a great meeting to save the chat and post us to all of us later on so we could refer to what's being done, what's the magic behind Chris and Jim's presentation. So that's all I could capture. So thank you, John. Over to you.
Thank you, Mahi. That concludes our evaluation reports. Jerry-rig, everyone. Back to you, Toastmaster.
All right. Yeah, full jerry-rigging tonight. And we are running a little bit long. I don't know. It's 9 o'clock. We're not that bad. If people need to leave, you're certainly welcome to leave. I have a few items of business trying to line up folks for the next meeting. I am trying to talk Jim and Chris to aligning the presentation that they just gave with a manual project of some sort so that online presenters can rack up some points towards the Distinguished Club program.
We have
so
a vote
we'll
counter.
try and retroactively jury rig that into one manual or another.
I have an advanced
And ask,
manual I'm
ask somebody
working
who's
on
on this,
now.
on this call to give them a written evaluation as a follow-up.
Yeah,
David,
but I have
David,
an
we need a
advanced
vote
manual
counter.
I'm working on now, so this will work in there. The
Oh, okay.
timing is different, but
Yeah,
we'll get. I'll get
we'll work it out. We'll work it out.
I'm sure.
Let's see.
David, we need a vote counter.
Oh, vote
Michael.
counter. This report. Michael gave me his report on the table topics, which was the only thing we really voted on. Which was,
I get best speaker, right?
I believe you do, Jim. Best tabletop is
No, it's me.
That's
Carol
Chris.
Brzezinski, which must be why she spoke up to make sure that we called on the vote counter. You were supposed to also send for our prospective new member, send Michael your votes, and we will announce that afterwards. I guess just in case we ever shoot somebody down, I'm supposed to announce it afterwards rather than at the end of the call. But we hope people will come back next time. And let me share my screen quickly so that we can see where the holes are in next week's meeting. I think we have some speakers lined up. We have a full roster of speakers. We actually have a guest that Adrian invited to visit. But we need a Toastmaster of the day. We need a bunch of other supporting roles. So can we fill in a few of those, at least, to start with? Can we get a Toastmaster of the day to help organize the rest of this? Don't all speak up at once.
I should try and do that sometime.
Yeah, Jim, now that you're famous, let's make you Toastmaster of the day.
Yeah, okay.
All right.
We're home for a while. Are we going to be here? Yeah, got to check with my boss here to make sure.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, it'll let us know if it changes.
Yeah.
A counter or timer? Any volunteers for either of those?
I'm going to have to make an apology again for next meeting. So sorry, I can't help, David.
All right, that's okay. Of course, and you help so many times. How about evaluators or topics master? Anybody?
I'll do topics master. I haven't done that yet, I don't think, in this club.
That's Lou?
It's Lou? Yes, sir.
All right. All right, we'll pick on the rest of you as the week goes along. A couple of other items of business to mention.
Deborah said or counter. Deborah Carr.
Oh, darn. I was trying to get away without that. No, we did have the counters report earlier.
No, she said she's willing to do it for next week. Her
Okay.
mic is off. Mm-hmm.
All right, Deborah Simpson?
Carr.
Oh, Deborah Carr. Okay.
Thanks, Deborah.
All right. We will.
Got it to work.
Yeah, now it's working.
All right. So let me put her in for that before I forget. The other thing I want to mention is we've already discussed that we are looking at filling the VP of Education role. Fabiola is stepping back from that. She's still in the role for right now. Adrian had expressed interest, and we are going to open it up for further nominations. And we...
David?
Yes.
Before we go into business, can we ask our guests what they thought about the meeting? Because they might not want to stay for some
that's a good,
of the business pieces.
That is an excellent point. So, yes.
In regards to the position, though, if you're interested, please contact David Carr if you're interested in the role. Okay, and now we're ready to move on to the next one.
And then I did want to mention that Arlene is also talking about she would like to step back from Sergeant at Arms, so we need somebody else who can join a little bit early and help open the meetings. But we'll take nominations for that. We'll vote at a future meeting. So let's see. I think we may have lost some of our visitors along the way. Jim Barber, actually, very experienced Toastmaster. Would love to hear from you what you thought of this meeting. Jim, are you there? Jim may have stepped away.
He's muted. You can unmute him.
Well,
we can listen in on what he's saying.
I think he'd be speaking up if he was there. Well, Jim, are you there? I'm here, but I'm having mic problems. Okay. Technology always betrays us at the worst possible moment, but we'll hear from Jim another time, I hope. And Emmerich is driving. I don't know if I want to disturb him. So
well, I can hear you.
Oh, you can. Okay.
Yeah.
What did you think of the experience? What did you think of the workshop? And
it's my very first time, so I really enjoyed it. I thought it was very informative. But I do have a few questions. One is, what do you guys do when you have like video lag, where the person talking doesn't match with what they're actually showing on the picture?
Well, I mean, all sorts of technology problems can crop up from time to time, and we just plow on through them as best we can. And
I agree. Absolutely.
At times we've had to stop and say, you know, Jim was supposed to give a presentation, but something's not working. Let's go on to the next speaker, and maybe we can come back him if he's able to sign out and sign back in, and things start working again.
Yep.
So you just have to. And that was part of the question I asked him earlier. The speaker we had on talking about Facebook Live talked about the same thing. It's largely a don't panic, keep your cool is probably the best guideline, and just deal with things as they come up.
And sometimes you just bail. Sometimes you just have to give it up and, well, sorry, it didn't work and we had technical difficulties and, you know, we'll do it again.
David, you know what the best answer could have been? The best answer could have been, hey, Emmerich, why don't you join and find out?
Yeah, that's right. Well, you definitely should come back and see your regular meeting. Since
it's going to happen.
Since this was not a regular meeting, we would have 3 different presenters, 3 evaluators, and the table topics impromptu speaking practice. So you get a little bit more of a sense of what a regular meeting is like.
But David wanted us to do that.
Yeah,
and we're happy to.
And you know, I'm interested in feedback too on whether people feel that once a month for one of these workshops, is that about the right pace, or are we overdoing it? Do you think we're crowding out speaking time by doing it so frequently?
Well, I don't think so. I think this is nice. But yeah. Hey, you know, I'm the featured speaker this week, so yeah. No, once a month sounds good to me. What do you?
I like the once a month, and it's even better if we have it consistent, like the 3rd Monday of the month or something like that. Good idea. When we're promoting it, we can tell people, "Oh yeah, the 3rd Monday of the month, we always have a special speaker."
Well, so we have one for December. We have one for January. I thought maybe actually take a little bit of a breather in February and then come back in March, and maybe we try and get it to be on a more regular schedule. I think that would
I like that.
I would try and get somebody for February if you can. I think if you're on a roll and we're promoting it, it's just good business. Right.
Well, okay. We'll see. Well, then okay, you can be in charge of finding the next speaker.
I will help with that.
Yeah. Okay. Excellent.
Are we officially adjourned for our regular meeting? Or are we in a different meeting?
I think we should be. Yeah, we were supposed to. Yeah, I can turn off the recording. We are actually. Yeah. Good night, everybody, on the recording land.